The galaxy was divided, controlled by a sprawling alien empire known as the Zyrex Dominion. Their rule was absolute, stretching across countless star systems, their military might unmatched. For centuries, humanity had been little more than a subject race, a source of entertainment for the Zyrex and a resource to be exploited. But the Zyrex had made one critical mistake. They underestimated humanity's ability to evolve, to adapt, and to fight back. Among the humans, bred to fight in the endless wars against alien races, Rook Armitage was exceptional. He was the product of the Zyrex brutal breeding program, a soldier forged for battle, honed to perfection with every weapon and combat technique imaginable. However, Rook's story would not be one of blind servitude. He was different, and his differences would spark a rebellion that could shatter the empire that had enslaved humanity. Rook's eyes snapped open, his breath coming in sharp gasps as the battle simulators powered down. The air smelled of sweat and ozone. He lay on the cold metal floor of the training chamber, the simulation combat ringing in his ears like a fading echo. The Zyrex military facility, located on the barren moon of Zyve-12, was a place of unrelenting discipline and cruel training. It was here that humans, like Rook, were molded into perfect soldiers, bred specifically for war. They had been genetically altered, enhanced beyond normal human limits, their muscles stronger, their reflexes faster, their minds sharper. Every day was spent in combat training, honing their skills for an inevitable war against the Zyrex many enemies. Rook had never questioned his place in the grand scheme of things. He had never thought to ask why humanity had been subjugated, or why they were bred for this endless violence. His only concern was survival, and in that he excelled. He was a soldier first, and nothing else mattered. But that day something had changed. As Rook staggered to his feet, shaking off the after-effects of the combat simulation, he caught sight of the reflection in the wall's mirrored surface. A man who seemed almost like a stranger. His jaw was clenched, his eyes burning with a strange intensity. The usual fire in his heart, the drive to fight and kill, had been replaced with something darker, something that gnawed at him from the inside. Why? Why had he fought so hard, trained so relentlessly? Was this all he was meant to be? A weapon for others to wield, a tool to carry out their will? Armitage, a voice barked behind him. Rook spun, snapping into a posture of attention. Standing in the doorway was Colonel Vaughn, the Zyrex officer in charge of the human soldiers. Vaughn's alien eyes glowed with an unnatural yellow hue, and his elongated reptilian features were as sharp as ever. "Your performance today was precisely acceptable," Vaughn said, his voice cold and calculating. "You may rest, but remember, you are a weapon, Armitage, nothing more." Rook's fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to retort, to tell Vaughn that he was more than just a weapon, but the words died in his throat. He was just a weapon, wasn't he? Vaughn turned to leave, but before he did, he glanced over his shoulder. "You should be grateful, Armitage. The Zyrex built you to be the perfect soldier, and yet you still question your purpose. If you have questions, you will find that the answers will never come." Rook stood still, the weight of the colonel's words pressing down on him. He wanted to scream, to break free, but he didn't know how. His training had taught him to obey, to follow orders without question. But that feeling, the one deep in his gut, refused to be ignored any longer. Days passed, and Rook's sense of discontent grew. It wasn't just the constant warfare or the unyielding pressure to be the best soldier. It was the realization that he was being controlled. Every moment of his life had been mapped out, from the day he was born in a genetic lab to the day he would inevitably die in combat. There had to be more than this. One night, as Rook sat alone in his quarters, studying the battle tactics for the next engagement, he felt a flicker of something deep inside him. A memory, perhaps, or a dream that had never been fully formed. He had seen a world that wasn't built on conquest and bloodshed, a place where people lived freely, where they could think for themselves, make their own choices. It was a memory of a life that had never been his, but one that seemed so real, so vivid. Rook clenched his fists, as if trying to grasp the elusive images in his mind. He had seen freedom, and he wanted it more than anything. The next day, during a training session, he made a decision. He would no longer be a slave to the Zyrex. If they thought they had created the perfect soldier, they were wrong. He would be their undoing. Rook's plan was simple, though its execution would be anything but. He had spent years observing the movements of the Zyrex, studying their weaknesses, their patterns and their routines. The Zyrex were strong, but they were not invincible. The humans had been bred to fight, yes, but they had also been bred to follow, to serve. The rebellion would need more than just brute strength. It needed strategy, cunning, and the spark of something the Zyrex could not understand. That spark was humanity's defiance. Rook's first step was to break the chain of command. He sought out those who had been bred alongside him, soldiers who had been bred alongside him, soldiers who had seen what he had seen. Slowly, they came together, forming a network of like-minded individuals. Together, they would find a way to strike at the heart of the Zyrex Dominion. But their first challenge was simple: how to get past the Zyrex's security. Rook knew that the only way to get to the heart of the Empire was to strike at its most vulnerable point, its leadership. And the key to that was the Zyrex Emperor, a being of unimaginable power and cruelty who had kept the galaxy in check for centuries. But getting close to the Emperor meant infiltrating the heavily guarded palace world of Zyrex Prime, a fortress surrounded by an impenetrable fleet. It was a suicide mission, and Rook knew that only the most elite of warriors could succeed. He called upon his closest comrades, soldiers who had seen the world through his eyes, who had felt the stirrings of rebellion in their own hearts. Among them was Captain Harlan, a sharp-minded strategist, and Sergeant Kale, a veteran of dozens of battles, whose loyalty to Rook was unwavering. Together, they formulated a plan. Using their knowledge of Zyrex tactics and technology, they infiltrated a convoy of Zyrex warships under the guise of a routine military operation. The operation was a ruse, a calculated risk. They were not supposed to make it through, but Rook had no intention of failing. The journey to Zyrex Prime was fraught with peril. Time and again they came face to face with Zyrex warships, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness of space. But with Rook's leadership, they slipped through the cracks, navigating the Empire's defenses like shadows in the night. As they neared the planet, Rook gave the order. "Now," he said, his voice calm, measured. "We strike." The battle that followed was nothing short of a miracle. Rook and his team infiltrated the palace world's surface, sabotaging the Zyrex's defense systems and creating chaos in their ranks. The Emperor, high above in his citadel, was not prepared for the sudden onslaught of rebellion that tore through his fortress. For the first time in centuries, the Zyrex found themselves on the defensive. They had always believed themselves to be untouchable, but humanity's defiance was something they could not counter. The Zyrex Emperor, a towering figure clad in black armor, stood before Rook in his final moments. His alien eyes glowed with a rage that threatened to consume him. "You think you can defeat me, human?" the Emperor hissed. "You are nothing but a tool, a weapon to be discarded when no longer useful." Rook's eyes met the Emperor's with a cold, unwavering intensity. "No," Rook said, his voice low and filled with purpose. "I'm not a tool. I'm the weapon that will destroy you." With a single decisive strike, Rook drove his blade into the Emperor's chest, severing the heart of the Zyrex Dominion in one swift motion. The galaxy had been changed forever. The Zyrex Empire crumbled, its forces scattered and defeated by a rebellion that no one had believed possible. Humanity, once a pawn in an intergalactic game of survival, had risen to take its place at the top of the galaxy. Rook Armitage became a symbol of humanity's resilience, a leader who had turned the tide of history. No longer would they be tools for others to wield. They would forge their own path as masters of their own destiny. And the galaxy, once ruled by alien conquerors, would now bend to the will of humanity.